Welcome to Dr. Green Speaks.
What's up, family? You know who I be. It's the kid again, Dr. Green. Yeah, you heard it. Listen.
Bridging the gap between scholars,
read more books than the curriculum profile,
doctors, athletes, and pop culture influencers.
Major show alert.
Oh. Ladies and gentlemen, this is it. And now, Dr. Green Speaks.
Bring them out. What's up, family? You know who I be. It's the kid again, Dr. Green. And today on Dr. Green Speaks, I have one of the world's leading financial scholars and social commentators. You've probably seen him on Good Morning America, MSNBC, BET, ESPN. Too many media outlets to go through and mention all of them. But I'm not talking about just a regular pundit. I'm talking about a brother that has his Ph.D. in finance from the Ohio State University. I'm talking about none other than my friend and brother, Dr. Boyce Watkins, the creator of the Black Wealth Boot Camp, the Black Business School, and a man who has built a media empire that's second to none. I just wanted to say, what's up, my dear brother? What's going on?
Thank you for having me.
No, it's absolutely a pleasure to have you on Dr. Green Speaks. I mean, you and I have been friends for years, and even though I've known you for many years, I am constantly amazed at not only the work you do, but the scope and reach of your platforms. A totally Black-owned, Black-controlled platform that feeds our people. And, you know, I just wanted to ask you, like, how did you get the idea to get started? Like, what's the beginning? What inspires you or inspires you?
You know, the beginning, I think, is that is just being Black in America and kind of seeing where there were some voids, right? That there were some areas where you know, where problems weren't being solved. And it doesn't mean I'm the person who's solving all those problems, right? But it's sort of one of those things where you see your teammates, you know, taking an L, and you're kind of like, okay, how can I help the team win? You know, and and I figured, you know, I believe a PhD. I mean, my gosh, the horror that you know that I know I experienced in my doctoral program, and ups and downs and tragedies and the hazing and all this, you know, it kind of does give you a superpower, you know, and so when you get a superpower, you become an intellectual superhero. Why wouldn't you be out trying to save the community and do what superheroes do? I never felt comfortable being locked away in academia because I would look at real impact. You know, I don't care if you tell me I have an impact. I need to really see it, right? So an impact doesn't just mean that you're hitting a lot of people. It means you're hitting the right people, and that you're hitting people that matter to you. And the people that mattered to me were back in the hood and back in my community. It was not, you know, the people at these wine and cheese parties, you know, this scholar's from Germany, this one's from Russia. That meant nothing to me. It meant nothing to the people that, you know, that were where I came from.
So let's talk about where you came from. Let's go right back to the beginning, born and raised.
Born and raised in Louisville, Kentucky. Grew up really looking up to Muhammad Ali. He's actually a second cousin of mine by marriage. And so I grew up kind of hearing stories about Ali, you know, his courage and everything that made him great. And that really inspired me. You know, just kind of this idea of this guy from Louisville, my little town, who ran the same streets as me, literally going to the biggest places and running to the biggest, baddest people, and and just dominating every situation that he went into. I was inspired by that. And that showed me the power of courage. You know, Ali was great because he had courage. He wasn't scared of nothing or nobody. Even when he was wrong, he wasn't scared no more or at all. And so, you know, I kind of started there with that in terms of a model of what it meant to be an impactful Black person. You add that to say Malcolm X, the Harriet Tubmans, and the people, the great liberators throughout history that we admire. I always said, you know, I want to try to aim in that direction, right? So, so growing up, I didn't do very well in school. School's not my thing. Systems, I never did well in systems because I was a misbehaved child. I was the kind of kid that just sort of ended up in trouble a lot, in the principal's office a lot, and that was, you know, my early indicator that, in my mind, it told me I wasn't that smart. It told me that I wasn't really going to be that successful. And in hindsight, obviously, it reminds me of the failings of the public school system and how this disrupts so many of our people that have the most potential. I believe black children should be educated by black people, by conscious black people. That's my 2 cents. That's what I believe. And so through the years, I was a knucklehead. A lot of guys. I mean, a lot of people. When you get marginalized and you start to sort of feel almost criminalized by society, you start sometimes behaving like the outlaw. And so I was the guy who colored outside the lines, almost on purpose. I didn't, I was kind of in trouble all the time. I had a baby when I was 18 years old, and I wasn't a troublemaker though. I wasn't a bad person, a bad kid. Like I wasn't going to rob you. I wasn't on my way to prison, etc. But I wasn't a person who just fit into much of anything. In my high school graduation, my mother got a phone call where they were basically telling her on her job that they said, well, Boyce won't be allowed to participate in the graduation ceremony because he didn't come to the graduation rehearsal. So I was like a rule breaker, and I guess that played out pretty well because later on in life, I would question everything. And so when I got to academia, I questioned academia. I was like, okay, why are we working so hard at this? Why do you tell me that this is important when it doesn't seem that way? It actually seems like that's important. And that just doesn't really work within a lot of systems. People create their systems in their own image to pursue the goals that they find to be important. And really, if you want to fit in that system, you got to go along and play along. And I think it's a very difficult, dangerous place for a black man to be, where you're trying to fit in and play along with a white supremacist system where another man literally is dominating you. It's not empowering. It's not fulfilling. And I believe it can actually create mental illness. And I see a lot of scholars go through that. I see a lot of our scholar types, like going to sleep every night with a liquor bottle in the hand and, sitting around, for hours talking to other black intellectuals about microaggressions and how, let me tell you what these white people are doing to me on my job, and I just kind of think I'm more of an advocate of I don't know, maybe it's because my daddy's a soldier. My daddy's a soldier, and soldiers figure out what the mission is, and soldiers will fight, and they will go pursue the mission and go and complete the objective and solve the problem. And so for me, it was more like, I'm only going to sit around and complain with you for so long before I start to feel like it's a fruitless activity. It's some sort of almost mental masturbation, if you will, or a type of, like just this like a ritual, like almost like, prayer, or just like, okay, let's get together today and feel sad again about what white people have done to us again. No, okay. I'm not going to do that. I'm only going to do that with you maybe about 3 times. And then after that, I'm going to say, okay, how we going to go get them? Right. What's our counterattack? Right. So,
that's great insight. Thank you for sharing. So tell me how because that's interesting, because that's a very similar beginning. It's my beginning. Like I was a knucklehead. I was in trouble. I was always fighting. I was coloring outside the line. So can you tell me how you get from not being someone that's considered a scholar to getting your Ph.D. at a top tier institution in finance, mind you?
That was the thing that really worked for me is first of all, I play sports, and the sports, my love for sports was driven by my natural competitive instinct, and then also you combine that with just natural work ethic, right? And accountability. You grow up with a strong father who tells you, if you want something, you fight for it. You got to work for it. So when I got to college, and I had my daughter, her mother gave birth to her. I didn't, of course. And when her, so I got this little baby, and I'm sitting there thinking, what am I going to do now? Which way is my life supposed to go? And I just, got this inclination that education was a critical element to success and the ability to do what I really wanted to do, which was make money. So I got to college, and they're like, so what do you want to major in? I'm like, oh, well, what's finance? They're like, well, finance is money. I said, okay, I'll major in that. I think if I study money and learn about money, somebody will pay me money to talk about money. So that's what I did. And the other thing is, And I don't know where this part comes from. I just, felt like if you're going to do it, do it to the best of your ability. And if you want to make money, try to go out here and make the most. And that's, to me, again, that's natural male competitive instinct. Maybe some men have it more than others and some women have it more than others, but I guess I had a lot of it. So I got to college and I just sort of said, okay, if I figure out this school thing, then I can get what I want, which is money and opportunities. So I approached school. I had never really studied before. So I approached school the way I approach sports. And what I learned in sports is that if you want to win a championship, you got to practice harder than everybody else. You have to practice consistently. And so when I was sitting in the library trying to figure out, well, if I'm a good student, how many hours a day does a good student study? So my logic was pretty basic. My logic was, well, I work at Taco Bell and I can work 8 to 10 hours a day. So if I can work at Taco Bell for minimum wage 8 to 10 hours a day, then I can study for 5 or 6 hours a day. And and that's the beauty of actually solving those problems in a vacuum, because I didn't realize that most college students don't study 6 hours a day every day consistently. I didn't know that, yeah. But I was like, oh, well, that's easy then. Because I mean, think about that, right? Like you go to college and somebody says, oh, you should study 4 hours a day. And they're like, oh, Lord, that's too much. Lord Jesus, what am I going to do? And I'm like, but wait a minute. So you're about to come out of college with a C average, and that white man going to have you working 10 hours a day every day for the rest of your life for a low wage, just so you can get out of student loan debt by the time you're 60 years old. Like, you're going to be a sharecropper, son. Like, you need to figure this out, right? So that to me was like common sense, right? And I guess I don't know. I guess common sense isn't so common, but that's what I did, right? So I'm sitting in the library again, heavy imposter syndrome. Like, really in my head, I'm like, I shouldn't be here. I don't belong here. This is for smart kids. And studying 6 hours a day. Well, I don't care. If you're dumber than Elmer Fudd. If you go to college, you study 6 hours a day, you're gonna kill it. So suddenly, I'm the number one Black student on the entire campus, right? And I'm loving this because I'm shaping my identity. Like first time I had that feeling of being a winner and successful. Growing up, I didn't really have my father was a great man and a strong man, but he didn't spend a lot of time with me. So and my biological dad never met them. Really, I met the man like 3 times or something. And and so I didn't have anybody instilling confidence in me as a kid. I wish I'd had that. If I'd had that, I probably would have done a lot of other things earlier. I had to kind of find myself on my own. But yeah, so this is my first time like feeling like, okay, this is cool. I like being the man. I don't care who the man is. I don't care who you talking about. Every man likes being the man, So I'm loving this, man. So I just grabbed onto it, never let go. And once you go down the rabbit hole and you start getting that little taste of success, you start going deeper and deeper and deeper. Mm-hmm. And then, and so that leads into like, okay, well, if I go into finance, who's making the most money? Where are the best opportunities? And also I realized I was good at this school thing and good at learning and all that. So I said, okay, maybe I'll be a professor. And I met a mentor named Tommy Whitler, Dr. Tommy Whitler at DePaul University. He's still there. And he was the only at that time, the only Black faculty member ever tenured in the history of the business school of the University of Kentucky. That's it. Like literally. And, and the thing was that, that this relationship with him, meeting this guy, when I met him, he came out of his office and I was looking at him like, why are you in the professor's office? Like, what are you doing? Oh, you must be the janitor. I swear I thought that because I'd never seen a Black professor before. And that's when he told me that he was the professor and we became friends, man. We would meet and play basketball and all that. And then he gave me a ride to lunch one day, and he had this like really cool shiny Porsche, and I mean candy red, man. And I'm like, wait a minute, you're a professor, bro. How do professors buy Porsches and have these big houses like you got? And he said, oh no, business school professors do pretty well. And I said, well, how well do they do? He said, oh, you're in finance. He said, finance professors make the most money. I said, oh, okay, so that's literally what led me down that rabbit hole, man. And then, I guess after that, the rest was history. I can tell you more if you want to know, but those were literally the decision-making steps that occurred to get me into academia.
No, that's incredible because you're speaking to one, the influence of having that male figure in your household and in your family, and also another Black man coming at another point in your life. So it seems like that there's a reoccurring theme of getting, having these people speak into your life and help guide your life course trajectory. So I think that's just amazing. So where's the jump, right? Because you speak often about Black intellectuals and Black scholars being stuck on the plantation, the academic plantation. What was it that caused you to go out, to leave what would have been considered, a winning position, right? So you have reached the top of the intellectual, ladder, right? You're in the upper echelon of the university systems. Like, you've made it. What makes this man then say, you know what? I'm not doing this. I can do better on my own. Because that's a unique jump. Because most people, they get their PhDs. Well, they get their bachelor's, master's, however they climb that ladder. They get their PhD, and then they're on that, that rat race toward tenure, right? Which is another, I guess, kind of validation mechanism, right? Because we do often suffer from that imposter syndrome. Like, I don't belong here, and any moment now they're going to discover that I've been taught and I'm not that smart. Because I know a plethora of individuals that have shared that they do it, but constantly they're sitting there saying, any second now they're gonna know I'm not really that smart. I know I experienced that myself. So what allowed you to then have the kind of confidence in yourself to say, look, I'm gonna go out on my own and build what now can actually be considered as a media empire?
Well, two thoughts come to mind based on what you said. One major thought is that most people I know that are the best builders, most people I know that are the best revolutionaries, if you want to call it that, right? And I guess I would consider myself to be some sort of maybe an economic revolutionary. I'm a big believer in Black economics as a source of Black power. Most revolutionaries don't grow up wanting to go to war. They want peace, and they get called into battle. Like you're living this regular life. You think about a movie, like you're living this regular life, happy life. You kiss your wife goodbye and go to work. And then one day somebody bombs the house and kills your whole family. And so suddenly your whole trajectory, your whole path has been changed, and your whole mission has changed. Your whole, purpose has shifted involuntarily. And that's what happens with a lot of Black folks, where you go along and you're playing the game and you're doing what you think you're supposed to do to be successful. And I did that. I was a very hardworking student. I was very dedicated to what I did. And then things just happened that just kind of honestly pissed me off a little bit. It was just so unfair and just blatantly biased. And academia, unfortunately, as many wonderful people as I met in academia, there are also a bunch of arrogant pricks. I mean, just elitist, insane, ridiculous people that are they become racist, but not because they just hate you because you're Black. It's just because they just have this like weird elitism where they're just like we hate everyone who's not in the elite class like us. And so by being Black, you're by default kind of in that category. But it doesn't matter if you're poor, if you don't have a PhD, whatever. Like, we look down on pretty much everybody, including you, especially you people, right? Which makes me think about, like, for example, when Cornel West got into it with Lawrence Summers at Harvard. That was to me, that was elitism. It wasn't just like racism, because remember, Summers went over and served with Obama, because Obama was elite like him. But it's like this sort of thing where it's like, you represent these dusty, dirty people that people like me don't associate with. So that's why your work is not important, right? So I didn't enjoy that very much, and it pissed me off, and it didn't work very well. And I told you, I always colored outside the lines. So, you poking at me, we gonna fight, and like anybody, if you push me too hard and I get to the point where I'm ready to fight you to the death, then yeah, you might still win. But at that point, I don't care if you win or lose. At this point, it's all about me just making sure that I fight in a way that is honorable. And that's very dangerous. Like when you're dealing with, because when I had my little battle with Syracuse, it was like, I got into the point where I was pretty dangerous because I did have access to media and a big platform and all that. Even if they wanted to pretend like I didn't, they wanted to pretend like I was this little assistant professor who didn't matter. No, I was known all over the country. So if I decide I'm going to scream and holler at the top of my lungs and I don't care anymore if you blackball me, I don't care anymore if you let me go, then at that point, I'm probably still going to lose. I'm okay with losing, but you're going to lose a little bit too, right? So being called to battle was part of that process. Now, when you were talking about confidence, the imposter syndrome, kind of feeling like maybe you don't belong or you don't fit. Well, first of all, that's going to happen a lot with Black people, because if you spend your whole life as a Black man trying to pretend to be a white man, you're always going to know in an honest way that you're not really who you are pretending to be, right? Like if I'm LeBron James and I'm not playing like LeBron, I'm trying to play like Steph Curry, then he has a good reason to be insecure about that, because he's not Steph Curry. Steph Curry will always be better at being Steph Curry than LeBron James. So a lot of self-confidence starts with self-love, right? That means really looking at who you are in the mirror and really loving yourself, warts and all, and saying, you know what? I got some parts of me that make me into just a bad boy, right? But then I got some other areas that are not so great, but I'm going to work on that, right? But that's my business, not yours, right? So it's not your place to come and make me feel bad about my my vulnerabilities or my weak areas. No, I'm not going to let you. That's not your job. It's my job. I got this, right? But either way, at the end of the day, I love me, and because I love me, I'm very confident in me, very proud of me, and I know that I'm kind of all I got. Like this brain I have is the only brain I'm ever going to have. So sitting around wishing I was something different or better is just not beneficial when it comes time to really go to war and really go out there. You know, you get on the football field, you're the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. That's the team you got. You got to win a Super Bowl with the team you got, period. So what I would say is that I think in academia, what's really interesting is that because so many of us feel that imposter syndrome, people naturally take advantage of that insecurity. Like an insecure person that's easily triggered by their insecurity is easy to exploit and manipulate and intimidate, right? Like, look, if you keep on getting out of line, I'm gonna blow your cover. Or we know we know that you're only here because we're allowing you to be here, because it's not like you're really good enough, because we both agree that you're not good enough. So don't make me mad, or I'm gonna punish you, right? And also I know that you're vulnerable, right? Like again, the way a pimp does a hoe, right? A pimp cannot pimp a woman or woman or man, right? We don't make this gender specific, but a pimp can't pimp a person who has really strong self-confidence, right? Pimps don't aim for the woman who's highly educated, who feels good about herself, who has a great set of parents, who comes from a good family, right? Who's got that master's degree, right? He's not going to go after that. He's going to go after that vulnerable, scared, insecure woman who's struggling for money, an inch away from starving to death, right? And feed her a couple compliments and get her in line. And while he's, this and all the kindness is usually backed up with the pimp hand. Like you get out of line, I'm a pimp slap you, right? So Black people get pimped when we go into these spaces because we are psychologically vulnerable. We don't really have that confidence in terms of believing in who we are, because again, we've been falsely led to believe that getting closer to white people makes us better, right? So it's like we put a premium on. We've allowed them to almost like print money, in the sense that we've given them this sort of power to say that being in your space is more valuable than being in my space. Right? Me getting a chance to fit in where you come from means more to me than me fitting into where I come from. You're not trying to get into my neighborhood. I'm trying to get into yours. So at that point, you're in the vulnerable position of being an uninvited guest. You're playing every game on every game you play is an away game. You never get to play in the home field, right? So if you know about anything about sports, if a team was forced to play every single game on the road, their winning percentage is going to be lower, right? Because nobody's cheering for you, right? Nobody's cheering for that Black man or Black woman who's really in that, surrounded by people who don't identify with them. And it's really, to some extent, I think it goes deeper than just race, though. I don't get me wrong, race certainly matters. We know this. But I think it's also a matter of saying, who are you, and do you love that person, and where do you really belong, and are you okay being there? So long story short, what drove me away from academia was, I got called to battle, and I'm like, man, this sucks. Like, I played the game right. I did what y'all told me to do. I'm supposed to live happily ever after. It didn't work that way. And then things just kind of escalated to the point where I was like, you know what? I don't need to be here anyway. Right. And I got a couple of things going. By the time I had a couple of things going on, first book I wrote, didn't do anything. Nobody wanted me to come speak. I would literally go give all these free speeches and spend money going to get a chance to go speak. Right. Like I wasn't making any money doing any of this stuff. And then a little money starts trickling in, and you're like, oh, okay, wait a minute. I made an extra $3,000 this month. That's cool. Right. I don't have to, I have to wait for them to give me a raise. I can go make my own money. And also when you start getting to that point where the pressure starts getting heavy, And really a critical inflection point was when Bill O'Reilly decided to really go after me on the O'Reilly factor. I was sitting at home like 7:00 at night, and my sister calls me, and she said, Coco's my nickname. She said, Coco, they are talking about you like a dog on the O'Reilly factor. And what happened was he had said something about Michelle Obama. He'd made a joke about lynching Michelle Obama. And I was like, no, you don't do that. Like, you can't say that about a black woman, right? So I think I'd gone on CNN or whatever and was like, this is crazy. This guy's a racist, blah, blah, blah. So he just decided, I guess, for some reason, to just stick it to me, right? Like, I'm going to get this guy fired. So the whole hour, imagine this. At that time, the O'Reilly Factor was the #1 show in America. So imagine for a whole hour on the #1 show in America, they're talking about you. Like, they're not inviting you in to defend yourself, right? They're talking about you, and they would have a segment and a guest, and they would say, "What do you think about this terrible black man?" And they would talk crap about me, and then they go to the next segment and they play another clip of me and be like, "What do you think about this terrible black?" And so it was the talk of the whole campus, right? And of course, it was going to be a big deal. So I get a call from the dean who's like, "The chancellor wants to meet with you or something," right? Because they ambushed the chancellor. Fox News ambushed the chancellor on her way to work. So imagine, this is like I'm an assistant professor now. So this is my boss's 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 boss. Right? and she's getting all these calls from these donors who gave millions of dollars who are like, I'm not giving any more money to this school if you keep supporting that racist. You're harboring this racist, right? Again, they didn't really know anything about me. They just know what Bill O'Reilly said about me, right? Which is crazy. And here's what happened, right? So basically it was like I was in this position where it's like, okay, I'm being told to apologize, right? Like, okay, apologize, smooth it over, it'll make it go away. And I was like, but I don't want to apologize because I didn't say anything wrong. Like, he made a joke about lynching a black woman. That's not appropriate. Like, I'm not the crazy one here. And the difference maker for me was economic freedom. It was like, okay, if I lose this job, am I going to be able to pay my bills? Am I going to have a place to live? Am I going to be able to, afford the basics? And when I realized I could do that, that gave me the courage to kind of stand up with them, because I noticed a lot of scholars think just holding something like tenure over their head, unfortunately, causes them, the price you pay for that is so high. Like, you're giving up all your freedom of speech and expression. Like, you can't, you're brilliant. You got all these amazing things to say, these great observations that the world can benefit from. And you are scared to open your mouth because your boss has pretty much held this pimp hand over your head, saying, we're going to slap the hell out of you if you get out of line at all. And so at that point, it was kind of at a point of no return. It was like, okay, do I sue them or not? Because I had a case. The chancellor knew I had a case, actually. She's a pretty liberal white lady. And I think she understood where I was coming from. But it was like, unfortunately, she's surrounded by this administration that just really wasn't trying to get any of that. And so we had some back and forth and all that. And so two things that I remember deciding was, one, I decided, you know what, you're not going to molest me in the dark, right? I'm going to literally strap a bomb around my body and walk into the building. And I'm going to blow my career up. I'm going to blow up my invitation. I already know, because think about this, right? I'm raising all this hell at Syracuse. What university in their right mind is going to hire me at that point? Nobody, right? And that's what had happened, right? I applied to a few positions and they're all excited because PhDs in finance were really rare. Black PhDs period in finance are rare. Black PhDs in finance are almost non-existent. They're like pink unicorns. Like the year I got my PhD in finance, I was the only African-American on the planet to get the PhD that year, like in finance. There was nobody else. I looked around, I searched, I asked everybody, no. So you would think, right, with this diversity talk, like, oh, well, we're looking for diverse faculty and we're really looking for qualified black people. Right? That's BS, right? Because, I saw qualified black people come in, do a great interview, and then they would just tell them no because there was no accountability. Nobody was forcing them to explain why they didn't hire that person. They just chose not to. So I learned quickly that was BS. But also, really, if you think about this, though, right, it really helped me understand what diversity means. Diversity doesn't really mean that we really want people that are different from us. We don't really want real diversity. We want you to just do what we do and be like us, just have a black face so that you can validate our white supremacy, right? So you're black, you become like the black police officer who hangs out with the white police officers. You go to the Irish pub after work, like the rest of the white cops, but you beat up on black people like the white guys do, right? So now we've got diversity, but that's not real diversity. Real diversity is hard to do. because real diversity really involves the sharing of power, which I don't really know if that's something that people do naturally, right? So as much as I can be mad at Syracuse about what happened, I'm not really mad at them. I kind of get it, actually. It's like, okay, that's your school. You built that, right? You and the white boys got together and said, let's build a university. Now, 100 years later, it's this amazing institution. And that's your space. I don't know if I belong in that space. So I walked away. At the time, I had some animosity, but years later, I had no animosity at all. And I'll tell you why. Am I talking too much?
No, please. This is important.
Okay. Yeah, because you got me going telling my story. So I'm doing the stream of consciousness in terms of how it all went down. So two decisions I made at that time was, one, you're not going to molest me in the dark. I'm going to talk loud about it because I need you to know how racist you are, and I'm going to do my part to make sure that light is shined on that. Knowing full well that I'm not going to be the beneficiary of any progress that's made. I already know, like literally, I had this really great department chair. A white guy, wonderful guy. I'm not gonna say his name because I he's still there. I don't want to blow up his spot, but he literally explained to me when we went up for tenure, there were three black people that went up for tenure on campus that year, and he said, between us, the truth is that those other two people would never have gotten tenure if it wasn't for the fact that they really needed to reject you. So those two got tenure, I didn't, right? And he said the reason they got tenure is because they needed racial cover, to get rid of you. He said that because if you had not been there, then they wouldn't have gotten tenure. We rejected them outhand. Their visas were not qualified for them to get tenure. So, in a way, it's like football, right? The lineman clears the path, blocks for the running back who runs into the end zone, right? But, so that's kind of how it went down. But the thing was, I decided you weren't going to molest me in the dark. And I'm glad I did that because the following year, they hired a ton of black people. Just to prove that they weren't racist. Because every interview I did, I was like, look at their hiring record. Look at how many departments they have where they've never hired a black person, never tenured a black person, right? Just go look at the record. It's just because what happened was the conversation got into this weird, like it always does. Well, they're saying that you're not qualified and that's why they didn't give you tenure. So is that true? So I said, no, I learned this actually from playing. I'm a really good poker player, believe it or not. Poker is a great game of strategy, psychology, and math. And I've won tournaments with hundreds of people in it, right? So poker was a really fascinating thing to me. And one thing I learned about poker is this. When you really want to win, you don't let yourself get on the defensive. You play offense. You don't get yourself in a position. See, black folks make this mistake. You put yourself in a position where you're always reacting to I can't believe they did what they did, right? No, in poker, if you want to win, you actually go on the offensive so that they're reacting to you. So you have the first mover advantage. Like, okay, what am I going to do now? What am I going to do now? And they're kind of freaking out about that, right? So the thing was, that in this whole situation, I decided, I'm going to just go hard, go on the attack. And so when you come to me and you say, well, we're from the such and such a journal, and they're saying that you're not qualified, and we just want to clear the air. And what do you think, Dr. Watkins? A lot of people would have spent a lot of time defending their qualifications, and I didn't do that. I said, let's assume I'm not qualified. I'm going to go ahead and punt that ball. Let's assume that I am terrible. I don't deserve it. I am garbage, and I should be fired. I said, now here's what I want you to do. Now I want you to go look at their hiring record, look at the data, and you tell me, with a hiring record and a promotion record like that, can that be defined as anything other than complete racism? When you haven't promoted a black person in a department in 100 years, you can't tell me that there's something wrong with me. No, there's something wrong with you. You are incapable and unwilling to evaluate qualified black people. That's what's wrong with you. And nobody's calling you on your BS because black folks, we spend so much time being defensive. Like, I got to be perfect to prove that. No, I never made a mistake. No, white guys don't have to do that. White guys make mistakes all the time and still get opportunities. But somehow they got you walking on pins and needles, worried that the little thing you did wrong, again, it plays into your imposter syndrome, right? So you feel like you got to be perfect in order to get opportunities that are provided to mediocre people all the time, right? So I wasn't going to let them molest me in the dark. Second decision I made was I said, I'm not going to sue them because I don't want to spend 40 years in court. I read a story. The thing that made my decision for that was actually the professor, who happened to be at the University of Kentucky where I went to undergrad. He was an English professor who earned tenure in 1976, and he didn't get it, and he took him to court, and he won the lawsuit. And it was 35 years later, right before he died. Like literally he won the lawsuit like 2 years before he died. I said, no, I'm not going out like that. And so I just took off, man. And it was hard. It was difficult, but I figured out something, right? To me, this was important for me. I said, okay, what is tenure anyway? Why is everybody selling their soul for tenure? Like, you know, like I'm gonna sell some WAP to get tenure. Like people are just like giving up anything. I'll give my firstborn child for tenure. So I was like, what is tenure anyway? Oh, okay. So tenure is pretty much job security. That's it. It's financial security. I mean, sure, there's some status that comes with that, but I think you can actually validate yourself. I think that validation, I get validation from my community. There's financial security. So I said, okay, so financial security, you can get that in a lot of ways, right? So I said, okay, so I can get financial security provided by my oppressor, by the way, by getting this job for life. Or I said, or I could figure out how to go out here and make some money. If I go ahead and I figure out how to make $1 million, that would make me pretty secure. And then I could do whatever the hell I want and I don't have to answer to anybody. So I said, which is harder? Figuring out how to get into these elitist academic journals, which I had no mentor. Like that was the thing. They literally load dropped us in the middle of this department with no support, no mentorship. There was no senior faculty member I could go talk to. And if you learn about academia, like Alicia, my fiance, she's a full professor of social work. A lot of her progress was driven by having a black woman, one black woman in particular, who bulldozed through her tough situations, her tough spots, right? She'd be in the committee meetings and would say, no, you're not going to do that to her, right? That advocacy, right. Having somebody block for you is really important. I was Patrick Mahomes of the Super Bowl, offensive lineman, right? So you saw what happened to Patrick Mahomes, but he didn't have a blocker, right? So anyway, thinking about it, right?
Super Bowl reference.
So what I decided to do, man, was I said, okay, I'm gonna go out here. I'm just gonna figure out how to go make some money. And I said, there are thousands and thousands of white people who make lots of money all the time. I could figure it out. So I just started studying entrepreneurship. As I would listen to podcasts on entrepreneurship every day. I was taking classes on entrepreneurship, talking to people I knew who knew how to make money. And what happened was my confidence grew. Like, okay, first you make your first 2,000 or 3,000. You're like, okay, I can make enough money on my own to survive. And then it goes to 10, then 20. And then you're like, yo, wait a minute. I'm making more than I made in academia. And so you just go down the rabbit hole. So years later, I swear to God, when I tell you, I swear, I put it on everything, that I am not angry at Syracuse at all. In fact, I want to send them a thank you card, because if I had not been called to battle, I never would have found my purpose. So I have no animosity toward them. Awesome. But I do, but I do have a heart for those scholars that are still in that system, because we know it's a corrupt system. It's a bunch of BS. And so the thing is that it's really on Black people to say, how do you build a better system? How do you build something that's better for you?
Thank you. No, that's very insightful. I mean, because, people look at where someone is today and they have no real concept or understanding of what it really took for you to get to this point. Like it for some people, it's like an overnight success. So now understanding, like, there was a lot that you went through to get you to this point. Can you tell our audience a little bit about the many, many different projects as concisely as you can, that you have? Because like I said, you have a media empire that reaches, I guess, millions of people. So can you tell us about, like, the different things that you have now that our audience members can enjoy? A Black-owned media outlet, unfiltered, right? Uncut. Can you tell our listeners a little bit about your conglomerate?
Well, I would say that the great meeting spot for a lot of people is drboycetv.com. And that's what we call the home for intelligent Black people. And we promote unapologetic Blackness, and also critical thinking skill, freedom of speech, tolerance for ideas that are different from your own. I think that's really important, but that's really a reflection of my core values. One of the great things I got from academia was the ability to really truly hear people that were different from you, that were thinking different from you. And I really like that. I like the idea of being challenged, by people who have different ideas. And it makes me very sad that we live in a world where people don't do that. Everybody lives in a silo. And if I'm a Democrat, then all my ideas are perfect and your ideas are terrible because you voted for somebody different from me. I don't believe that. So that's a main gathering spot. Also, the Black Business School has been something that's been really fun. We put together the Black Business School like a church, and it's theblackbusinessschool.com. And basically, anybody can actually get started for free. We have free stuff, and then we have low-cost programs that allow you to learn from all different kinds of of really smart Black people from all different backgrounds, millionaires, real estate moguls, people that have built their own. Our core values are that we believe Black people should educate our own children, create our own jobs, and support Black businesses. And the reason that's important is because when you're letting other people educate your children, they're going to poison them. They're going to fill them with propaganda. They're going to pump them full of whatever idea that they want them to have. And many of these educational systems built on white supremacy are not going to really teach Black people the things they need to know in order to be liberated. They're going to teach you how to fit into the system. So while we don't know if we're ever going to get reparations for slavery, we know we get preparations for slavery. They start giving you preparations for slavery when you're a kid, when you go into that public school that's teaching you to worship people like George Washington, and slave masters. And then at that point, you got media that's preparing you for slavery, because a lot of the media is just terrible, especially some of the music, stuff like that. And then on top of that, you're being fed this weird myth that says that your best pathway to success is to go to a big white-owned university, give them all of your family wealth, and go deep in debt, so deep in debt that you can never repay it. Half of all Black college graduates default on their student loans. They cannot pay the debt. The debt is crushing. The debt lasts them for the rest of their lives. They die in debt, and half of them do anyway. And and then also, you're in that process, you're not being trained to necessarily liberate and build your community. You're trained to really go work for another white person. So then at that point, and again, this is not anti-white, this is just pro-truth. So you end up in this situation where you're like, look, Mom, I made it. So now you live in the suburbs, you got this job with this company that only has one Black person in the department, and you feel like that's progress. Like, look, I've really done something for my community, but really have you? You actually haven't. Your community is still in shambles like it was when you left it. Your community needs institutions. It needs jobs. It needs people that can create and build things. It needs wealth. The property values are declining because you want to go live in somebody else's neighborhood, right? So all these things that we're taught, these preparations for slavery, have to be challenged. So we believe that Black people should educate our own children to prepare them to build the community, create our own jobs so we can hire our own, so that we're not running around concerned about sort of microaggressions and mistreatment on the job. Well, we should create those jobs and then support Black businesses so those Black businesses can turn around and create the jobs that we need.
So no, that's great. So what would you advise students, Black students, Latino students? Because in that, obviously there is a value to education, right? There is a value to going to school, right? What would you recommend for them that are in these at these universities? They're getting their degrees, because a lot of them, like you said, are going to graduate. They're going to be in debt, and they're going to be working their way out of that debt for the rest of their lives. So I don't think you're saying everyone get out of school, right? And don't get educated. So what would you advise? What would your advice be to those young Black and brown students that are at these universities that are going to get these degrees that may not be able to pay for them to live the kind of life that they hoped for?
Okay, well, I think it's important to just make sure we know, right, that number one, going to school and getting educated are not always the same thing. Right. We know a lot of people who go to school, but they never get an education. And then also, education isn't always the same as knowledge, right? So we know knowledge is essential. Education can be a pathway to getting knowledge, and knowledge can be a pathway, and going to school can be a pathway to getting education, right? But that is not a natural automatic process. You have to think that through. So I believe there's a mathematical technique called dynamic optimization, where you solve a problem by working from the end. You start at the end and you work your way backward. Like, where do you want to be? And then you work back to where you are, so you know what your next step is, what your next move needs to be. So if you define the final destination to be something that we talk about in a lot of, quite often, this thing called freedom. We talk about freedom a lot. What is freedom? Freedom is the ability to do what you want to do, right? On a daily basis, if I'm a free Black man, I can get up and I can go where I want and do what I want, spend time with my kids, whatever. Right. Most of us aren't free because, you say, well, what do you want to do today? Well, I would spend time with my kids, but I got to go to work. Right. Or whatever. Right. Mm-hmm. So if the goal is freedom, then that means that your knowledge and your education, your schooling, etc., should all be sort of pointed in the direction of freedom. So like going to college and stuff like that. I'm not anti-college. Alicia is a college professor still at her university, and our kids are all going to college. But we talk a lot about freedom, and that means that our conversations about knowledge and education might be a little bit different from what we grew up with, right? So I'll talk to our 10-year-old about her passion. Like, I noticed you really like to dance. I noticed that you make TikTok videos and you do video editing. There are people that do video editing as a profession. And then we talk about business ownership. So, for example, I had the opportunity to work with Ice Cube on some stuff, and I had her meet Ice Cube because I said, this guy, he makes content just like you. He makes his own movies just like you do, right? And she doesn't know about the gangster rap,
That was back then.
She just knows the family movies, right? But it was like, and of course, it doesn't have to be Ice Cube. I mean, I know that's a rare honor, right? But it was like, but it's the thought process that that I want to focus on in that it's like, okay, let's start with your passion and let's give you the freedom to pursue your passion. When they talk about inalienable rights, they talk about life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. So if you focus on that last piece, the pursuit of happiness, what does that mean? That means happiness is like a destination and you need to pursue it. And in order to pursue it, you have to be free to pursue, right? And a lot of us are not free to pursue our happiness because we're locked down, hemmed up on some job that we're doing every day that really isn't reflective of who we really want to be. And we're doing it because we got to pay these student loans back. We're also doing it because we don't have any other options, right? Options is also connected with freedom because, the more, which is also connected to skill. So the more skill I have, the more options I have. So what I do with the kids is we'll talk about their passion and then what it means to have the freedom to pursue that passion. And while I'm in the background building a capital base for the children so that when they get out, they're not hemmed up with the student loans and all that. We're investing for them consistently. I'm also telling them, like, look, if you really want to be free, whatever training you get, whatever you major in college, we're going to make sure you know how to start a business so that in case you get tired of working for those bigots that you're working for, you can just walk away and be okay that night. We're going to talk about investing in the stock market, because we want you to own assets, because in America, in a capitalist society, the freest people in America tend to be the people that control and own capital. We're also going to talk about real estate and ownership so that you will own things at an early age, which will allow you to have the freedom to pursue your happiness, to pursue your passion, right? So what I would say is not so much to say that college is terrible, you shouldn't do it. It's like, yeah, college can be a piece of that, but you must supplement that. If you don't supplement it, then you're gonna be stuck. It's like literally playing basketball and you're learning one move. You can never be a great player if you only have one move. You have to be able to dribble both hands and be able to shoot layups, 3-point shots, free throws, have different aspects to your game so that when the defense decides to try to stop you, then they stop one move, you got another move you can go to. For many Black folks, we got one move. That's the whole fill out an application and get a job move. And when they block that move, we're like, man, we can't win. No, learn some other moves.
They got one move, the hezzy. They up and they still land.
The pump fake. Yeah, pump fake. They can go right. That ain't gonna work.
That's not. They're gonna cut you up. So this is something that I have to say the first time I've heard this was when you pointed it out, and I think it's a really important point to share with our audience. Isn't it interesting that and of course I value education, college is really important, but isn't it interesting that we go through all of our formative years from kindergarten all the way through your bachelor's degree and you could learn absolutely nothing about money?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like that's the one thing that they're not going to cover. You're going to American history, you're going to get biology, you're going to get political science, but you will not learn about money.
Well, you know what's interesting, man, is I thought about it, right? And if you want to understand America, look at history and where things come from, why things were created in the first place. When I talk about preparations for slavery, these preparations for slavery aren't just done for Black people. You just happen to be at the bottom of the food chain, but they do this to a lot of people, right? You live in a capitalist society, right? And in that society, you need things like you need lots of employees, you need lots of willing workers, you need men going to work, you need women going to work, right? And two quick stories I'll share that kind of helped me to understand this. One was I remember reading about how the nephew of Sigmund Freud was an executive with a company in New York that was trying to figure out how to get women to buy more cigarettes, how to get women to start smoking. So what Sigmund told him was, he said the cigarette can also be seen as a phallic symbol. And if you message it in the right way, you can convince women, the women that are part of the women's lib movement, that taking the cigarette was like taking away the man's penis. And so they packaged the marketing in a certain way. And before you know it, all these women were smoking cigarettes as an act of defiance. Like, look at us, we're taking away your, we're taking our power, and by popping this, cancer stick in our mouth. And so there are a lot of people that will use, those sorts of ideas and movements to pursue a more sinister objective. And there are even some who would argue that the whole idea of sort of shaming the women that maybe want to stay home with the kids or whatever was to get more women into the workforce. Because the more workers you have, the more wealth you have, the more the capitalists and industrialists can do well, because now they got more employees to choose from. Well, the public school system was designed to do the same thing. It's not designed to prepare you to be a captain of industry. It's designed you to be a cog in the wheel of industry. Universities, and the second story that I'll share that helped me understand why universities even exist is, I remember when I was on Indiana University's campus and I was in this big, beautiful building, and there was a sign that said donated by Eli Lilly. And I said, why would Eli Lilly give millions of dollars to build a building on this campus? That's crazy to give away that much money. And I thought about it, oh, that's right, because they're now going to help them develop a program to train people that can come work for Eli Lilly once they graduate. So these systems are not designed to turn you into a millionaire and to help you own assets and all that. Historically, that's been for the elite. These systems are designed to prepare you to become a good worker. And so even HBCUs will teach you everything you need to know about how to manage a business, but they will never teach, they really don't put energy into teaching you how to start the business and run the business, right? That's something you have to learn on your own. Fortunately, we live in an age where you can learn that on your own, but you have to be conscious, economically conscious enough to say, I'm going to go outside of that system in order to get what I really need in order to have a complete and empowered life.
So basically, it's important for people that are getting an education the traditional way that it's absolutely positively supplemented with education that is also in line with their goals, their hopes, their dreams, and what the end goal is, right? Like you said, freedom, right? Or financial freedom, economic freedom. So just putting your head down and doing your homework and passing your exams and getting good grades is not all that needs to be done to arrive to a place like that you have.
Yeah. There's a saying that says that that formal education will help you make a living, and self-education will help you make a fortune. And I think that anybody who wants more than kind of the standard compensation for education should definitely pursue self-education. If you're Black, it's essential, because a lot of education is built on cultural propaganda, and so it's all sort of you're sort of giving your education in the eye of the beholder. They decide what's going to be important, what your value system is going to be, and so you have to supplement that education. If you don't, it's not going to work out well for you.
So one of the things that I hope that we can establish just in the Black community and among the advocates, the Black intellectuals, the Black business people, is this, this coming together, this consolidation. Are there people that you, to this point, haven't worked with yet, but that you would like to? That if you could, if you're building an all-star team to take over the media in America, who would you have on your all-star team?
Oh man, that's a tough one. Let me think here. I think somebody with some capital, like like a Byron Allen, or what's the other guy's name that gave all the money to Morehouse? I forgot his name. Robert is it Robert Smith? Yeah, let's start at the top. Let's go with the money.
He said the check writers. You start with
let's write a big check, man. I love Dr. Claude Anderson a lot. because I think he's just such a leader in just giving us what we need, especially right now with this reparations conversation. He's the guy that has all the receipts on slavery and everything else. He's the man in that regard. Let me see here. I gotta think on that. I know that there are a lot of people in academia that I think could do a lot for the community. It's just a matter of taking that brain power and targeting it in the right way. We've got critical problems in the community, not just wealth, but every area. From healthcare to everything else, relationships, all that. And I think that massive $1 trillion brain power that exists within black academia. I would love to see that on a bigger landscape. I like where Trisha Rose and Cornel West are doing their thing over there. Right. Greg Carr from Howard, is it Howard? Yeah, that's doing that thing with Karen Hunter. I think that those individuals are great because we need that intelligentsia. We need those people that are going to maybe at some point be funded by think tanks that just get together and say, okay, let's lay out our agenda on what the biggest problems are in our community, and let's focus on solving those problems. So one day, and we're not that far away from that, but I told Alicia yesterday, I said, Cornel West can't, he's upset about losing his little situation at Harvard. I said, man, I would love to hire Cornel West. And I think I could make that work. Like I don't know what he makes at Harvard, but I was like, I could probably pay him and make it work, like maybe it becomes a black business school, like that. That would be pretty cool.
See, and that kind of out of the box thinking, I think, is going to help us move the needle much faster. That, being able to think about maybe we could come together. Maybe I could pay him. Maybe we could find the resources to build a conglomerate of the black intelligentsia that's actually out there and changing lives. Obviously the Black Electoral Network has an incredible collection of black intellectuals in every possible discipline. And one of the things that we're working on is spending our intellectual capital in places that will do the most good, the places that we've come from, and being able to connect people. Like my connection with you, I value very much so, because I've learned and continue to learn so much from your trajectory, your skill sets. You are an amazing, what I call a scholarist, right? A scholar activist, like someone that has the intellectual fortitude and chops, right? That can make it and supersede in the academy, and that connection, that action in the community for our people. And I just want to say I thank you and I appreciate all that you're doing, and just wanted to thank you for taking the time here to spend on Dr. Green Speaks. You are an amazing person, and I recommend that all of my listeners go to Boyce TV. Dr. Boyce TV, is that correct?
Yep.
Go, because there's so much, whether and you also deal with relationship, like you deal with all of the popular topics and some hard-hitting topics. And one of the things that I've also appreciate is that, yes, you do have opposing opinions. Like, it's not an echo chamber. You don't just bring a bunch of people on that are parroting your ideological positionalities, your thought process. You bring some people that are very interesting and diverse in their perspectives. So, and that I think also that takes a great deal of confidence and security, right? Because you and the panelists that you bring on deal with these different perspectives in an intellectual and critical way. So I recommend that my listeners take a quick view and spend some time there and help Dr. Boyce Watkins build the kind of media conglomerate that's free to speak truth to power and to help our people. So I just wanted to thank you for sharing your time with me. And we've got to do it again. There's so much more that we can cover that we'll cover at another time. But thank you so much for coming, Dr. Boyce Watkins.
Thanks for having me, brother. I appreciate it. And ditto to everything you said.